Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. As you see from the setup here, we are doing a podcast today. And with me, I have my friend Michael. And I'm sure many of you saw from the title, we're going to be discussing manifestation, law of attraction, and we're just going to dive a lot deeper into these topics and hopefully bring some new perspective and awareness. And yeah, so to get started today, Michael, will you tell us a little bit about yourself so that my viewers can just have a better understanding of maybe your background, where you come from, what you're passionate about, and things like that?
All right. Well, thank you for inviting me to participate today. My
Yes, of
name
course.
is Michael Hebert. I'm originally from Minnesota, but now I live in Wisconsin. My background is as a physician, um, but I've always had a passion for scientific subjects, but not necessarily the conventional scientific. I like to push the envelope. I like to really examine things, and I guess my passion is to discover what is going on behind the scenes in this world. Um, Background wise, my training is in medicine. I take a main interest in the workings of the human brain. Um, what I do every day is try to figure out why people's brains aren't working right and fix it. Whether it be an infection, whether it be a mental illness, whether it be a brain tumor. Um, but there's a lot about the brain that we don't understand. And that's why I'm most interested in it because of how little we know. Uh, you know, I I like to think about and study uh, the universe as a whole and what we don't know about that. Things that we encounter in everyday life that just don't have an explanation. One of those things being the law of attraction and manifestation. Uh, it seems to be a thing. It is something I encounter in everyday life in the form of synchronicities. For instance, why did your video happen to pop up on in my algorithm? And I think that's a synchronicity. And
Yeah.
you know, there are all kinds of things that happen in everyday life that surprise me. And it shows me that there is more going on behind the scenes than we can possibly imagine. Right now, I'm scratching the surface a little bit, but I'm excited to see what else there is going to be. Um, I approach things like the law of attraction more from a scientific and mathematical point of view. Uh, the conventional physicist, the conventional mathematician would probably have nothing to do with the law of attraction. They'd probably say, well, it's hokum, from crackpots trying to make some money. But I think the way we need to approach these things is to say, well, it may be a bunch of BS, but suppose it's true. How would it be true?
Mm.
Uh, I approach, for instance, astrology from that point of view. There are a lot of people that would dismiss it. And yet, the more that one learns about the theory of general relativity, the more you see a mechanism for astrology. The positions of planets in our local neighborhood, the position of galaxies out there in the universe, the existence of gravitational waves. These are things that, well, that's a possible mechanism for how astrology might work.
Hmm.
Am I 100% convinced? No. Am I 100% convinced in the law of attraction? Not necessarily, but I'm willing to consider it, and I enjoy the thought of investigating it.
That's really cool. Yeah, I love the way that you have such a different approach to these things too than me. Like for me, my approach is definitely more so from the metaphysical side and the side of spirituality, and I think that's the part that I grasp a lot easier. And so I thought this would be such a great conversation to have, knowing that we come from such differing perspectives and viewpoints on life. And the fact that you're open minded enough to even question if these things are a possibility, I think allows you to not only be able to discover more, but with an open mind, you're able to really just expand not only like universal understanding for collective and for everyone, but for yourself. So on the topic of manifestation and law of attraction, these things are obviously probably more so in the metaphysical side of things, where a lot of mathematicians, like you said, or people who are super logical and scientific, are going to have a hard time grasping these concepts. And I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that maybe there's certain parts of their brains that are more active, and they have a harder time being more creative or even artistic in certain ways, because we obviously see this in terms of like male and female or masculine and feminine energies. A lot of people carry one or the other more dominantly, and that
Mm.
obviously can correlate also to someone who may be more creative versus someone who may be more logical in their approach to life. And so I think that this is going to be a very cool dynamic conversation, because we are able to like touch on both ends of the spectrum and bring a lot more awareness to people. And so to get started, as far as like really diving deeper into this, um, I would like for you to tell me, when was the first time that you started to question more on the like the metaphysical spiritual side of things? Like what opened your brain to say, what is the law of attraction, or I wonder if there's something else out there beyond just my logical mind or this concrete reality, 3D reality?
Well, it's been a gradual process. As far as the law of attraction itself, I guess the first time I came across that was when my mom actually read this book called The Secret, and
Mm.
she thought that was the finest thing since sliced bread, and she was so excited about it. And I learned a little bit more about it, and I guess it was more of a materialistic thing at that time. Like you convince yourself that you're going to get a Mercedes Benz, and it shows up, and er, I didn't like the materialistic emphasis of that.
Mm.
Well, she since kind of lost interest. Well, now I'm afraid my mom isn't doing very well, but dementia and such. But I guess that was my first exposure to it. But otherwise, I've had I saw a show called "What the Bleep Do We Know?" I don't know if you've heard of that. That
I have
came
heard of
out
that.
in, yeah, in maybe 2007, 2008. And it's along those lines of trying to look at reality from both a spiritual aspect as well as a scientific aspect. They interviewed a quantum physicist, an author, uh, some a priest. They had uh, oh, who else did they have on there? Well, but the idea was that what we don't know is very exciting, and that really got me into this topic. Um, and at that time, also, I was just starting to learn uh, quantum mechanics and relativity. I was kind of looking at it from a lay perspective at that time. But then I read this book called The Road to Reality by Sir Roger Penrose. And he attempts to teach you the actual mathematics and physics behind these thoughts. And I read the book 5 times trying to understand everything in it, but I just couldn't. So what I had to do was pick out each topic, and I had to look it up. Fortunately, I found a lot of my answers on YouTube because
Mm.
my learning style is more that of listening to a lecture or a discussion than it is reading. If I read a book like that, I have to read it out loud to myself in order to comprehend it. But so then, well, calculus was the first thing. If you don't understand calculus, you don't get very far. Linear algebra. Those are the two main pillars of science. Physics. Um,
Mhm.
but I'm getting off topic a little bit here. But as far as manifestation, the law of attraction, in that in that show, What the Bleep Do We Know? They talked about this topic of synchronicity. How things seem to happen in life according to a pattern. Like why did this certain letter come in the mail at a certain time? Why why do these certain people show up on your friend suggestion list on Facebook? You know, Facebook is a very complicated system. A lot of it artificial intelligence in there. Is it all deliberate? What's going on?
Yeah,
Um,
that's fun.
yeah. Uh, and then how I wonder if the law of attraction might work is this condition of what's called quantum superposition. Now, science studies it in terms of, say, the hydrogen atom. You have a proton, and around the proton is an electron. And that electron can be at various levels of energy. And you don't know which level of energy it's at until you do an experiment to make an observation and see. But until you do that experiment, it could be at any number of energy levels. The reason they call it quantum mechanics is because there are only certain ones that electron can occupy. It can't be anywhere. There are certain very discrete states that it can be in, and there is a sort of an addition problem where you add these states up and you divide by the number of states and you get the probability. And that's what quantum mechanics is all about, probability. And each possibility has a weight to it. You know, this is the most probable state that you're going to find the system in. This one, it could be, but it's a lot less probable. You know, so that is where I think the law of attraction comes in. I think those probability weights can change according to things like intention.
Mm.
Um, um, that you talk about the power of prayer. I think that it's possible that saying a prayer maybe changes the weights on some of these probabilities and
Mm.
makes a certain outcome more likely. Does it make it inevitable? No. That's why people think that God, hey, God, we had a deal and it didn't come out how I prayed for. Well, no, it may have changed the probability, but still didn't come out the way you wanted. You know,
Mm.
I think it leaves a lot of room for the universe to act.
Yeah. That's really cool stuff. That's like, it goes so deep I feel like when you have these conversations, because like we touched on in the beginning, we're literally being able to tie spirituality with science nowadays. There's so many people out there right now teaching about these concepts. I don't know if you've heard of Joe Dispenza. He has multiple books on tying spirituality with science and
Hmm.
how the brain works and the neurotransmitters and how everything is kind of tied together. And like you had said, there's certain things that you can observe and see under a microscope, and from a scientific perspective you can see things that are like physics. Someone
Yeah.
can look
Yeah.
at you're good. Someone can look at like someone who jumps off a building, and it's like gravity says that this is how fast or hard you're going to hit the ground. Those are just science-based facts. But there's also certain things that can change based on, like we've been talking about, like your intention or the state of being that you're in, because energy changes matter. Like everything is first created in an energetic place first and then manifests into a 3D reality. So that's why I find it so fascinating to really understand things from not only the science perspective, but also from the metaphysical standpoint and energy. Because when we look at thought, for example, everything in this physical dimension, everything that's been created started first as a thought, meaning everything just had to start as energy or vibration and frequency, and then was picked up by someone, us humans being the receivers of frequency and energy, and then is then turned into something. But someone had to mold it into something in order for it to become manifestation. So we're in a lot of ways, we're molding and shaping energy that is then becomes physical matter. Like someone built this house and someone built these headphones, and someone had to, over time become receptive to new ideas. Like 100, 200 years ago, we didn't have microphones. We didn't have, or, this, at least this high tech, we didn't have that type of stuff, because I think as people evolve, as we grow as humans, we become more receptive to new ideas, become more receptive to these higher level frequencies or higher level ways of being. And I know that may or may not sound, under the umbrella of manifestation and law of attraction, but I feel like it does, because anything that ties us, from physical and spiritual, and the 3D reality versus 5D, which basically just energy and matter, you're going to have a better understanding of how these concepts work, so that you can be better at manifesting and understand, maybe, oh, okay, if I constantly have these negative thought loops in my brain, these patterns of thinking are going to manifest in the physical world. And like you said, with your intentionality behind that, is going to show up in the physical dimension. And yeah, there's so much that I can touch on when it comes to that stuff, because that's been my
Mm-hmm.
fascination for the past 5 years, is like, how is it that my frequency and my thoughts and how I'm vibrating in terms of my mood even will show up, not only just like in the next few days, but continues to manifest and kind of creates like this either positive snowball effect or negative snowball effect, where you can see people's lives getting worse and worse and worse and worse, versus someone
Mm-hmm.
who continues to have more and more and more success. What are your thoughts on that?
Mm. Well, I've lived it. Um, my childhood was an ideal sort of childhood, right? Great, great. I developed and was able to become interested in science, become a doctor, but it didn't prepare me for real life, adulting. Uh, and then I call that the first epoch. And then came this 20-year period where everything went wrong. Um,
Mm.
Severe illness, and that left me vulnerable to drug addiction, and then rehab from that, and then it's alcoholism, and a bad marriage, and very poor work satisfaction, and my thinking at that time was just negative. You know, a lot of doctors complain about the hospital administration. They complain about Medicare and the rules of the government. They complain about the insurance industry. They complain about patients who won't help themselves get better. You know, and right now I can see it every day when I show up for work. There are people that are miserable and are complaining. Uh, and that used to be me. And then it was entering recovery from alcoholism that really started the process of turning that around. I that is when I found Eckhart Tolle, being in the present, the power of now, um, put together with Alcoholics Anonymous. It's an old, tried but true prescription for getting better. Uh, and then there was my overactive brain, all the thinking that I did when it was poorly guided. I did a lot of what ifing. What if this happens? What if that happens? Or regrets or resentments. So I knew that I was not going to be shutting down this brain of mine. Meditation, yes, it works, but I I had to have something to keep my mind busy, and that's when I found mathematics and physics. It was one night when I was looking up at the sky and picked out a single star and said, "Wow, I wonder what's happening there. I want to go there." Well, I can't. The speed of light is rather slow, actually. So, in order to get started, I guess I better take calculus. And, here I am 15 years later. Um, it still seems that we're very limited. I don't necessarily see a way around that speed limit, but there might be some ways around the distance, ways to be present at some faraway star without having to physically go there. Well, okay. But again, I'm
Mm.
off topic. Now, what were we saying?
I mean, I think that ties into what we're saying honestly, because you're
Okay.
talking about manifesting. So someone who was listening to you could be
Oh,
like,
yes.
"Holy shit, this is like possible for me to manifest something that maybe seems so far out there and so impossible, but really
Right.
isn't. Is it impossible? Or is it just a belief or a question
Well,
or asking for it?"
yeah. That shift in what I was doing with my mind, I has had a palpable effect um through manifestation, it would seem. Uh, I keep my mind occupied with physics and mathematics, and there's no space left, no time there to do negative thinking. And that put together with physical fitness, working out, the endorphins and what comes of that, plus just better health, better support for the brain. uh, Now I'm in the third epoch, and it's been the case for the last 8 years. And the better it gets, the better it gets,
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways. I mean, well, the money's a lot better, but that hasn't been my main goal. It just seems to happen. If say my kids need some financial help, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can afford. Well, I just give it to them. Then, well, within 6 months, that money has been replaced. Plus, there's more. It's like the more I give, the more I get. It's
Mm-hmm.
weird. Okay.
Yeah, it's like
Well,
multiplication almost.
yeah. Uh, so that kind of makes me, well, there is something to this manifestation. It's more subtle than just imagining yourself on a yacht and then you get to be on it. It's more subtle.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I think you do the right thing spiritually, and you will feel better. And as you feel better, then physical and materialistic things seem to improve, kind of on their own.
Yep.
It seems
I've noticed
it,
that
it
too.
seems yeah, it seems that not trying hard, and I know there's an entire philosophy behind not trying, like Alan Watts um, seems to have a lot to say about that. I haven't taken a deep dive into Alan Watts, but
I like him
uh,
too.
yeah. Uh, and like I say, and the more I learn about physics and math, the more I understand life in general. Like, the concept, she loves me not, or he
Yeah.
loves me not. Well, that is a two-state quantum system.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
uh, yeah. So, I go out I go out somewhere, and oh, maybe I make eye contact with a woman, and I'm like, oh, maybe she loves me, maybe not. It's in a quantum superposition. So I try to get an idea of, well, what's the probability of either outcome? Well, the only way I'm going to know is to make an observation. Let's go up and try to score the number. Oh, I have a boyfriend. All right. Eigenvalue 0. Or, it can go the other way, or sometimes I like to keep it in quantum superposition and just enjoy the possibility. You know, that's sort of an everyday life application of a quantum idea.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really cool. I think that just like you said, with everything in life, that's why I love the number two. I feel like everything has two sides because we're living in a universe of polarity. I mean, we see it everywhere. We see light and dark. We see black and white. We see good and bad. Man and woman. Like there's so many different um, things in our reality that show us that there's two choices. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners too have maybe heard of the teacher Esther Hicks or the channeler Abraham Hicks. They are basically a thought form that is channeled through this lady, Esther, who talks about how she got into a receptive mode of being able to receive basically a certain frequency or consciousness that is then being channeled through and allowing certain things to come through her. And she often talks about there's two sides to everything. There's wanted and then there's the unwanted. And by us knowing what we want, or by us knowing what we don't want, we know what we do want. So naturally, we're always in this stance in this life. Through experience, through observation, we know what we do want because we know what we don't want. So we have to have polarity in order to have anything, really. Like, how do we know what anything is without knowing its opposite? If we never knew what darkness was, what would we experience light as? It would just be what it is. And so I think through observation, through polarity, through having differing perspectives and also experiences in life, we learn what it is that we do want, and just wisdom comes through that. And so through every experience, if we choose to see it as, like, okay, this is something that maybe I don't want to experience, and then take it as, okay, well, now I know what I do want, instead of allowing ourselves to kind of like be demoralized by it and be like, oh, these bad things keep happening to me. This can, give us so much more power in our life. And one of the main reasons, like, I started a YouTube channel and I love sharing with people is to help bring more awareness and understanding to just how life works. Because I think the more that we understand how life works, the more that we can live in alignment with the universal laws and live in alignment with a reality that's more conducive and more enjoyable for us, so that we don't have to struggle and suffer, because a lot of that I feel like comes with just from being ignorant or not understanding how things are. And the more knowledge we have and apply that knowledge, the more that we're able to live in more peace, more joy, more love, because we are just a lot more, I'm at a lack of words right now, but basically just giving us what I think we came here to experience, which is fulfillment of desire and contrast through life experience. Because if we really didn't want to experience contrast and the ups and the downs, we probably wouldn't have chose this incarnation or this existence, where we must have known before we came here that we were going to have polarity, that we were going to have good and bad feelings, if you could even call it that. And so I really like that you touched on the better it gets, the better it gets, or the worse it gets, the worse it gets. Because I'm sure anyone
Mm-hmm.
listening to this can be like, oh, wow, I remember, in my own life when something, positive happened. Say they met someone that they really loved, and then pretty much every other area of their life started to get better because they felt happier, they felt more joy, and they're like, all of a sudden I'm making more money, my health is improved, all these things. But then the reverse is also true. Something tragic could
Mm-hmm.
happen, like a death in the family, or a divorce or something like that, and then all of a sudden everything's like downhill. You lose your job, or everything starts to just deteriorate, and we're like, why does it seem that somehow the better it gets, the better it gets, or the worse it gets, the worse it gets? And
Mm-hmm.
with this understanding, it's like we're learning to, like, almost biohack our life. We are learning to decode these so-called secrets of how life works, so that we can live a more peaceful and fulfilling experience by learning how it works. Like, you have the cheat code in a way to how to live the life that you really want to live. So that's kind of like my fascination with these topics.
Mm-hmm. So suppose there's somebody listening right now that is in the condition where the worse it gets, the worse it gets. How would you advise somebody to change that? How to use the cheat code?
That's a good question. I would say, for me, because I've had this obviously happen to me in my own life. Um,
Yeah.
the first step when you feel really crappy or when you're in such a low place is acknowledging that you do want to feel better. Because obviously, when we feel really shitty, we're feeling bad, and the fact that we feel bad is a sign that we want to feel better. I mean, it's kind of like, it's common sense, but it's not so common. And for me, when I was in such a low place in my life, I had to ask myself, Am I willing to let myself feel better? Because I think a lot of people, when they're feeling depressed or really low, and they almost fight for that, like they're fighting to feel terrible, they're fighting to stay in that place of struggle or suffering. And so I think step one is at acknowledging, I do want to feel better. Just saying that, like, I do want to feel better. And for me, that opened the door to new people, thoughts, and things to enter into my life that maybe before I wouldn't even have been able to see because of my state that I was in. Meaning, I was so addicted to struggle. I was so addicted to suffering that even though there were people that were trying to come into my life and things that were trying to make me feel better, I would just not even see it. I would not acknowledge it because I wasn't in a place yet to say, I do want to feel better. I'm willing to do what I need to do to make my life better. So, with that being said, I'll give you guys a few things that I've used when I've been in really like rock bottom places in my life. And the first one is gratitude. And I know pretty much everyone's heard of this. Like, it's not something that's like a new concept or anything. But the thing with gratitude that's so profound is that it is a universe, it abides with the universal law. And the law is what we give, we receive. And anytime that you're giving thanks for something, for anything, you're going to receive something back. So if you're giving thanks for your health, or you're giving thanks for the fact that you have a place to live, or that you have a certain amount of money, even if it's not a lot of money, you're going to receive more of that back because it's universal law. And there's a saying that's actually in The Secret. It's the second book, The Secret, the Magic, that says, let me see if I can get it correctly. Basically says I almost like need to read it out of the book. It basically says that the more you have, the more you're going to have, and the less you have, the less you're going to have. It was touching on the concept of, like we just said, the better it gets, the better it gets, or the worse it gets, the worse it gets. But it's all mindset, basically saying you have the choice to either have a great life based on your perspective of it, or you also have the choice to live in hell and be in a complete place of suffering and pain because you have that much power. You literally have all the power to either create something beautiful or create something terrible based on what you're paying attention to and what you are perceiving to be in your life. So, yes, even if you are in such a shitty situation, you're probably in that situation because you've been paying attention to all the bad things. You've been giving your thoughts, energy, and attention to all the things going wrong instead of, okay, yeah, my health is deteriorating, or yeah, I have not enough money, or whatever it is. Look for the things that are going right, because when you start to get that positive snowball, even if it's just small, you're going to start to build momentum in a more of a positive direction. But once again, just like with what we just said, it's going to be very hard for you to jump from feeling really shitty and suffering to I feel great and amazing. You're not going to be able to
Well,
make
that's
that jump.
for sure. It
Like,
took
you just can't.
years. Hmm.
Yes.
And yeah, the gratitude piece, that was what started my recovery. I mean, from rock bottom for me. And that, yeah, it was rock bottom. I mean, I lost my job, and I was so depressed that I didn't do anything about it. So I ran out of money and I was homeless,
Mm.
uh, on account of substance abuse. Those were the consequences of it. And I had a sponsor, and that was the first thing he had me do, was to make a gratitude list. And my first reaction was, gratitude for what? I got nothing. Well, my cell phone actually still worked. That hadn't been shut off, so I was grateful for that.
That's cool.
And there were some others in the AA program that took me in. So really, I wasn't homeless. was couch surfing for a little while. Well, I was certainly grateful for them. And then, I thought myself to be unemployable because, a disgraced doctor who's going to hire, but connections, you know, in the program. A guy knew a guy that owned a lumber yard. And so I got to work there, you know, and so I had something else to be grateful for. And then along the line, somebody in the program gave me this book by Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. And of course, he himself had gone through a time like that, homeless and miserable, uh, and that was my ticket in to being able to meditate, because he said, all right, ask yourself this question. I wonder what my next thought is going to be. And then you pause and wait to see what is your next thought. And then it comes. And the idea is, all right, that time between asking the question and when the thought comes, that's meditation.
Mm.
That's, only so I had meditated for 2 seconds. Well, it's a start, and so the skill that you develop is kind of letting that time increase before the thought comes in. And then, of course, you can study the breathing patterns, the chi, the chakras, and kind of over time learn how to notice, become aware of those things, notice those things, and the meditation gets deeper. And I think for me, that was the intervention. The meditation to change my mindset, the difficult intellectual topics to keep my mind occupied, and the gratitude. That
I like that a
when
lot.
the worst, yeah, when the worst was getting worse, the worse it got, the worse it got. That's what uh, changed that around.
Yeah. That's really
Yeah.
cool. Thank you for sharing that. Because I think that's going to be really powerful for a lot of people to hear. And I think another thing that I want to bring up too is that you don't have to reach rock bottom before things get better. I think
Good
it takes
point.
that for a lot of people, but it doesn't
Yeah.
have to. It doesn't
Good
have to
point.
get
Rock
that bad.
bottom is when you stop digging.
Yes.
That's what they say in
Yeah.
AA. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, because it's like you get to the point where, yeah, you've hit the rock bottom, but that's like, it's sad in a lot of ways that people have to get to that point where you have to like hit the bottom in order to finally surrender, when really you could have had, things go good and still surrendered and it would have just gotten better. But it's a lot of us are
Yeah.
so familiar with feelings of, suffering or feelings of pain that it literally takes the universe getting us to a place of so much pain for us to just let go and
Yeah.
surrender things. So I think that's another thing to bring up, is that no matter where you are in life, there's always a way to improve from where you are. Even if you're doing well, you can always do better. But
Mhm.
of course, the reason for this podcast is, to bring awareness to things. And so I just figured I'd throw that in there because I think that's important to know. And I've
Yeah.
had to learn that the hard way too, multiple times. But yeah.
Well, yes, when things are going very well, uh, you can get complacent.
Yes.
Mm. And, the better things get, the better they get. Becoming complacent might be the what would change, what would send you on the downward spiral.
Yes. Or taking things for granted, which is the opposite
Mhm.
of gratitude. Like you start to think things are so good, and then maybe you kind of go back into a pattern of, oh, this is supposed to happen for me, and you start to lose gratitude. And I think if you are less self aware, then you will start to spiral down, 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 down. And then, of course, it may take you getting to either that rock bottom or a really low place to be like, wait, how did I get here? Like, I thought I was in such a good place, but I think it's, once again, it's like through the power of self awareness and learning these tools and tricks, we can be like, okay, what are things that I can add into my routine or add into my daily life that are going to allow me to consistently move the needle forward in a positive direction and maybe not fall into complacency or fall into old patterns. And I can say for me personally, this has been implementing daily gratitude practices, which so many successful people talk about all the time. And that's something I
Mhm.
personally do because I think it's very helpful. Constantly keeping your mind in a place of looking for the things that are going right and looking for your blessings instead of counting your problems. Because once again, whatever you give attention to, you're going to get more of. So, do you want more problems or do you want more blessings? And
Mhm.
just asking yourself that simple question. And I mean, a lot of people probably don't want to hear that. You know, if you're still stuck in a victim place where you want someone to come save you, or you think something or someone else out there is going to come in and, you know, ride up on a horse and like take you off to happily ever after. But you have to recognize at the end of the day, it's you, and you're the creator of your life and your reality. And you also have the power to change it. And you wouldn't truly want it any other way. I don't think anyone really wants someone else to have power over them. That's just kind of like a cop out because they think maybe it'll be too hard, or because they don't know how, they want someone else to do it for them. But once again, if we bring this wisdom, knowledge, and awareness to people, then they can no longer, you know, say, oh, I don't know how to do this. Yeah, you do. It's easy, it's
Mhm.
simple, actually. Like, now you have all the tools you need to get yourself out of whatever situation you're in. But yeah,
And yeah, making the change, I think, is intimidating to people.
yes.
Breaking the negative cycle because it seems futile.
Mm.
But I think that's where the subject of one step at a time comes in. You know, like you don't need to meditate for more than 2 seconds. That's a start.
Mm-hmm.
You might, you know, maybe the only thing you have to be grateful for is that somebody gave you a couch to stay on at night and that your cell phone still works. I mean, it's something. It's a start. And one, you know, I guess one thing that I've had to realize, you know, you talk about whether the vibration is high or low. I think we get low vibration days, but the key is to say, well, that's all right. It changes because the frequency is always changing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this morning, I don't know, I felt kind of low vibration. And I thought, well, I'll be doing this podcast. Well, we'll see how that goes. Well, it's going great. Now my vibration has increased a great deal.
Yeah.
Um, so, you know, low vibration, bad day, it'll pass. I've rarely had 2 bad days in a row. I guess it does happen, but pretty rare. Um, and well, if a nice, reliable way to increase vibration for me is going to the gym, cardio
Same here.
specific.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think those are really powerful things too that you bring up about knowing how, and I think having the tools to, or the resources to increase your vibration when you know that you're not feeling good. Because
Hmm.
I've also noticed too with, you know, having bad days, for example, like I would say, I mean, even a year ago, I was in a much like um, more pessimistic, complaining state of being and state of mind, where a lot of the time when I get into those places, it's like I become completely blind to the fact that I'm the one creating it. And it's like falling back into those patterns of someone's doing something to me, or these
Yeah.
external circumstances are making me feel some type of way when really it's I'm choosing to not take control of my thoughts. I'm choosing to not consciously choose thoughts that feel good, that are going to increase my vibration and therefore create a different reality for me. So I think that's a really powerful way to recognize if you are. I mean, the easiest way to know if you're in a high vibration or a low vibration is if you feel good. Like, is your mood good
Yes.
when you wake up in the morning? Like, that's as
Mhm.
simple as that. And I always say for people too, just do a gratitude practice in the morning, because you're guaranteed to start your day off on the right foot, and that's going to create that positive snowball effect. So if it's, writing in your journal 5 to 10 things that you're grateful for, or telling yourself 5 to 10 things in the mirror when you're getting ready in the morning, that simple practice alone can completely shift your life, and it can completely shift your perspective. And over time, you're going to notice more and more good things happen. And it's not because something happened by accident. Because if you're someone in your life and you're like, I don't even know how this negative thing happened, or I don't even know how this positive thing happened, you can't recreate it because you don't know the process. You don't know how you did it. But the more aware you become of how to change your mindset, how to change your mood, which correlates to positive results, which correlates to more money, more happiness, better relationships, then you know in those moments when you don't feel good exactly what to do to shift yourself out of it. And that's been a really profound thing for me in my life, is whenever I start to feel any sort of negative feeling or thought pattern, I'm like, okay, well, I know how to change this because I have the resources to change how I feel. Like you said, whether it be going to the gym, getting in movement, going dancing, or, eating some good food, or being out in nature. Like, everyone has those things that, boost their mood and make them feel good. And, adding those things into your daily life is going to make you a happier person. And it's so funny how simple life is. Like, feel good and everything will work out for you. And people are like, F you, it's not that easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is.
And it's not, but it can be done.
Yes. Not always
Yeah.
that easy. But it is if you
Right.
catch it before it gets too bad.
Hmm.
I guess that's the key there, is checking in with yourself every day. If you start to have, like you said, you probably don't have very many bad days in a row. Like, maybe you have a bad day here and there, but if you started to
Yeah.
have, bad weeks, bad months, hopefully either you or somebody who loves you, who is close to you, will be like, hey, it looks like you're starting to have like a negative thought spiral, or like you're getting into this negative place. Maybe you should try this or do this. And then that way you can, catch it before you have to like destroy your whole life
Right.
and rebuild again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's, I don't know, a lot of good content and information. I'm glad you shared those things. I think that's really helpful for people. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we close out this podcast?
Oh, I think it's been real talk, a great conversation,
Yes.
and I think there's some useful things for people from this, and you don't need to understand quantum mechanics.
Unless you want
So,
to.
well, it's a deep and interesting subject. Um, well, I would hope to be able to do more of this in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I love having conversations because I feel like it's a great way for me to get my thoughts out and for other people to share their perspectives as well. So there will
All right.
definitely be more to come in the future for sure.
Very good. All right.
So thank you for sharing your thoughts here today. I will ask, if when you close out, will you just stay in the showroom just while it loads or
Yes.
finishes loading anyways. But
Sure.
that's it for today's podcast. Thank you all for tuning in today. If you watched to the end, please leave me a comment below and let me know what you guys liked the most, and also maybe give me some ideas for future topics that you guys want to hear from me. If you give the video a like, it does support the channel and helps me grow. But that's it for this week, and I will see you guys in next week's video. Bye.